Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Swiss. Today I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the Decentraland DAO system. I haven't been around for quite some time and I haven't really followed what's been happening with the DAO. I've tuned in into one of the Twitter spaces that they have made and I think, wow, okay, these guys are now making Twitter spaces. So a lot has apparently changed with the Decentraland DAO. And I was curious what else has changed. So I did log in into the website. Well, I didn't log in, but I did switch over to the DAO tab to have a look what has changed. And I'm seeing a lot of new stuff. And I wanted to go through some of that stuff and I wanted to discuss the whole idea of a DAO just here publicly. I think there are so many people in Decentraland who have kind of left or given up or have taken a break. And I think some of those guys are still following the progress on my channel from time to time. So I want to kind of, take you along on the journey with me, and let's just have a look at what's going on. Is it amazing? Maybe it's time to get back, and maybe it's time to get involved with the DAO, or maybe not. I don't know where you're at with this, but I'm trying to stay in touch with what is going on. So let's have a look. So basically, there are a few new tabs, and I want to start with this new transparency tab. Now, for some of you, this might sound funny, but like back in the days when I used to make proposals and when we used to kind of figure out what's going on in the DAO, I mean, back then, I think we had a Discord. I think we had the Discord already. Yeah, we definitely had Discord, but it was fairly new. It was a fairly new section for the DAO, and there were not so many different tabs here, that's for sure. There was definitely no transparency tab, not that I recall. And what's interesting now that it's visually very attractive, I haven't seen any other DAO that is doing so much effort to keep things transparent. I mean, you basically can see who are the people in the curation committee for wearables. I think that is very cool that you kind of, it makes it more entertaining to be in an ecosystem like this when you actually see real people that you know. These profiles need to be clickable for sure. Like we now have profiles in Decentraland, and I think this should be linked directly to the profiles. I think this would be cool. You can see the DAO committee members. I think we've just voted in Rizk into this committee. Very cool to see this reflected on the site. The Security Advisory Board, a couple of familiar names here. What is this here? Active grant requests. Okay, so this is basically people asking for money. And this is an interesting section. I'm always surprised to see what people think is worth the community's money. And but let's get to it at a later stage. Let's just first look through what's available on this page. Proposals funded. So this is the stuff that money has been spent on. Quite interesting as well. But to that later. So funding provided so far. Oh, this is not a small amount, is it? Well, I mean, yeah. Last 30 days of income. So you can see where the DAO has made money. So if there is a proposal to reduce the wearable submission fee, let's say, this will directly impact these revenues, even though it is a rather small amount. But so now what is the DAO committee? I don't know what that is. Transactions between the DAO treasury and the DAO committee wallets. So what does that mean exactly? I'm not sure what that means. Is this some kind of regular payment from... I don't understand what that means. Somebody will have to explain this to me. Hey, if you know exactly what this means, please do comment under the video so that we can understand what this income thing is. It's basically a transfer of funds from one Decentraland account to another, but how does this work? Either I don't recall or I never knew that. Last 30 days expenses. So basically grants that are paid out, okay. DAO committee, I mean, so basically this DAO committee account pays another account because this is the same, almost the same value here. It's very close. I don't understand what this is. Wearable curators committee payment. Okay, so this is straightforward. And whatever other is, we don't know. But I'm just really curious what this thing is. Somebody will have to teach us. And then you have the current balance of the treasury. So quite a lot of money in the mana token and quite a lot of Ethereum here. Everything else is rather neglectable, except maybe for DAI. Decent amount as well. So this is the transparency tab. You can basically see the current finances and the current community people in specific roles. Now it would be crazy if you would have like LinkedIn in here, like all the employees of Decentraland with all the developers and things like that. But you know, maybe this would create issues of, yeah, I don't know if people feel comfortable having their identity on a community page like this. But in the end of the day, people can go look them up on LinkedIn. So I don't know, but it will be cool to see, like, if you go transparency, like maybe go all the way, you know. But again, this is about the DAO, so maybe if these guys are not directly involved with the DAO, maybe that would not be relevant. Yeah, I was just thinking out loud. So let's move over and see what else do we have here. So we have our mission, join the Discord. I assume this is the DAO Discord section. Check our docs. Okay, so explaining how the DAO functions. Transparency dashboard, I guess. So there's a dashboard. So this is this being fed from a dashboard? Okay. What is this? I don't know what this is. I haven't actually seen this before. Voting power. My connection is, as usual, not really great, but let's see what this is. See how the voting power is distributed across the DAO members in terms of assets holding, amount of VP, and delegation. Okay, so this is VP from mana, VP from delegated sources from land, and then this is names, and I guess, yeah, names and maybe L1 variables or something like this, but rather a small amount if you see. Top proposal authors. Okay, so they're counting everything here. Okay, interesting. Maybe I could find myself in here with 1 or 2 proposals. I'll have to check this out later on. Number of delegated voting power. So this is an important one. So some of these addresses, they've got a lot of delegated voting power, and I'm going to get to this as well. So this is an interesting dashboard, and it's kind of a, you know, just in here in the menu, like like it's not important, but actually this is quite an interesting area to kind of look through. If you are, like, if you want to really get involved in Decentraland, you probably need to get involved with the DAO, because it's just interesting stuff, you know. But it is also frustrating stuff. Don't get me wrong. Like, and we are going to discuss this in detail. I just want to still go through some of these things. So DCL data source, what is this? Like, I've never gone through actually any of this stuff. I had no idea that they're providing all of these. So for example here, L1 variables VP. Some interesting data actually, and I actually think it's pretty cool that they have provided that. And I've never seen these two data sources ever. So they must be new, or I have never actually dug deep enough. So there are more important links here. You can actually apply as a DAO delegate from here. Quite interesting. I mean, this section of the site has really grown, and no wonder. I mean, they have recruited specific people to kind of foster this DAO community, and you know, as we said, I mean, there are Twitter spaces for DAO meetings, so it's pretty cool actually. But let's move on. I mean, we didn't have any of this, guys. You have to imagine, like, this thing here, whatever you have seen here, we never had this before. So the grants section is always like, yeah, you know, you tend to either agree with a lot of the things or not. It's always very subjective, and we're going to get to this on a more broader level later on, but I just want to look at these new areas of the site. And the first thing that immediately hits you is that there are subcategories here. So there is all grants, and then they subdivide this into subcategories. And this is something that I haven't seen before. Like, this is fairly new as well. So what is it like? What is an accelerator? Integrating Decentraland with leading e-commerce platforms. So yeah, I mean, you would have to see more proposals to get a little bit of a gut feeling of what these terms mean. But I suspect that each single subcategory is here for a reason. And I think it's been created out of necessity. When you have a proposal that doesn't fit anywhere, sometimes it makes sense to create a new category. So there is probably a specific idea behind some of these, and you would have to know exactly what they mean. I mean, this will take some time for me to understand what an accelerator is exactly. But interesting is that they have these subcategories, so it makes it easier to navigate. You maybe, in the end of the day, you will realize you cannot participate in every single category because you just won't have the time unless you're full-time Decentraland. So you may be just jumping in here, and maybe you want to see like, hey, what's going on with social media content? Are there any grants? Maybe something like that. I think it's cool. I think it's a great preparation for a larger kind of influx of proposals. And yeah, this is the grants section, guys. Like, let's move on to proposals. So same story here. And here, of course, we have these subcategories, which is cool. But what really hit me is that if you open up any of these proposals, what you're seeing here at the bottom in that section about the governance process, this is something that was kind of developed when I was still kind of actively participating, but we didn't have this section directly on the page. It was kind of being developed, and now it's actually set in stone, and you have that beautiful system. And I wasn't aware of it. I just haven't participated enough over the past 12 months to have been part of this. But now you actually have these binding steps that take you from a pre-proposal poll, right? Not actually directly a proposal, but you have a pre-proposal poll. And remembering how it was back then, all of these steps are here for a reason, because they're absolutely necessary. To go from an idea to an actual governance proposal is not a one-step solution. Like, especially if you have, let's say, quantities involved, like you have an idea and now you need to have, and generally the public agrees with you, but now you need to specifically define at what quantity something needs to happen. If you put in the wrong quantity in the initial proposal, like it was back in the days where you only had one step, people could agree with your idea, but they wouldn't agree with the specific quantity that you've selected, and then they would vote no, even though they agree with the actual idea. And this happened to one or two of my proposals. So now you actually have a pre-proposal where you can find out that people like the idea, maybe don't like the specific quantity or whatever that specific attribute is that is the problem. And then you can kind of submit and give it a go. And then you will realize that maybe you need to split your number into two numbers, right? Because maybe people have a different scale in mind than you did. And yes, it's in that area, but let's have two different options. And this is where you find out about that. And then eventually you can submit a governance proposal with the right number. And I think this is pretty cool that they have defined it and put it in writing like this. I haven't seen this. And another thing that I can see here is that there is a pitch process. There is a proposal process and there is a pitch process. I'm not fully sure how this works, but I would really love to know why they made this distinction. What is the difference between a governance proposal and a pitch proposal? I imagine a pitch is more like a new feature, something that is missing and needs to be developed, and you can go through the same process of submitting the idea, and then for some reason you would then need to have a second step, this tender proposal. I guess it came kind of out of the same learnings that you would have here, that we had here with the proposal as well. So you need to have that intermediary step, And then in the last step, you actually decide who's going to do it. So it's an interesting thing, because if you've missed this process, if you haven't been part of the issues that the DAO team has been facing here, you don't necessarily know why you need all the 3 steps, but it definitely makes sense, because it does make sense for me on these 3 points. And there I was part of the process at the very beginning. So very interesting that they have really kind of worked this out into steps. This is next level, guys. Like, don't take this as a gimmick. This is next level. This has been a couple of months of back and forward, and maybe a couple of years even. And interesting that they also have now a hiring category here, and linked wearables. This is something that I haven't seen before, but they are here now. I understand why they're here. And these bad boys we have seen before, so we are familiar with those. And grant request, of course, here you can see the subcategories we've looked at before. So a lot more details, more visual. The actual pages have a lot more details that are very nicely structured. I mean, the budget breakdown and things like this. I mean, this is next level, guys. Like, wow. And it's interesting that they have this voter sentiment area as well. I haven't seen this as well. Because sometimes you have a proposal, and as I mentioned before, everything makes sense. People love the idea, but they don't like the budget that you require, for example. Or they don't like one specific area. And here you can actually provide feedback, more detailed feedback than just saying no or yes. I mean, so many times we had this issue where it was super frustrating. You have a great idea, people want it. You do the pre-proposal unofficially on Twitter, let's say, and then you end up having issues here on the DAO because some people don't like one single area that maybe, and you are not even aware of that the budget is the issue because you don't get the feedback. But here you can have detailed feedback. I mean, I'm impressed. I'm not gonna lie, I'm impressed. It's an interesting read on a lot of the issues. I mean, you have to be very passionate about Decentraland to dive into some of these discussions here. But we get to that also in a minute. I just want to make sure we are through the most important tabs on the site. And once again, guys, this is probably mostly for the people who have been around in Decentraland a year ago and haven't kind of touched it since, and may or may not, stumble upon this video on my channel, just to give them an idea of what's going on. I'm not going to go into individual discussions here. There is a lot of fun stuff happening, and I've tweeted about some of this before. Like some of the stuff is really comical and fun, and some of the issues are really old. But I'm not going to get into this. I think this is very subjective. One thing that kind of... well, let's scroll through this page first before I continue with the next topic. Community engagement. See the participation signal from the community and understand the basic health stats from the DAO. So participating VP over time. So here you can follow the progress of how much VP is actually involved in the voting process. And this is maybe something that kind of takes us to the next discussion here. What has happened recently, and you have to correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong about this, but I kind of caught this on the fly the other day researching the DAO after a long break, and apparently some of the VP, and let me bring up that page. As you can see here, some of the Decentraland VP has been distributed to various community members. And you can actually see which wallets got each 500,000 voting power here. And I'm not sure what the process was on deciding who's going to get it. But there may have been a process of figuring out who the community members are who deserve to get 500,000 of voting power. I believe there was a process of selecting a delegate. And, if you haven't been in Decentraland over the past 12 months, you probably have missed it like I did. But these guys now have extra 500,000 voting power. And these are most likely to be very active community members. So now, no wonder that suddenly we have a rise over the past, definitely over the past 2 months here, a sudden continued rise in the participating VP, because now a lot of the VP that was with one of the founding members is now out there with active community members that can actually vote on stuff. So it's an interesting move, and you may agree or disagree with that move, and we can get into this. I'm not sure we want to include this in today's video, but the idea of passing on voting power to the community is not new, right? This was, I believe, the idea from the start, to eventually kind of hand over the keys to the community. And a lot of the projects have that ethos. I wasn't aware that we are at that stage in Decentraland already, but there was a lot of controversy of internal Decentraland accounts kind of hitting the DAO vote button on critical issue and really kind of sway the vote to the one side or to the other, and distributing some of that centralized voting power over active community members may be actually an interesting idea. Now, we have covered that. And one thing that that I want to include here is that there was a, let's see if we can find this. There was this proposal. To hide your votes. I'm not sure if I will be able to find it right now. It's probably by status. It's probably finished or past outcomes. Let's have a look. I mean, it will be a miracle. Oh, here it is. So there was this proposal, and let's quickly see if this is a pre-proposal or what this is actually. So this is a pre-proposal poll, right? So this is not binding. Nothing is going to happen. It's just like getting a feel, starting the discussion. Excuse me. And I kind of left a comment on this as well, because they're basically saying, hey, why don't we add a shielding option to voting? So the people who vote do not get contacted by people directly, as their vote will be then public, and they now also have, some of them have delegated VP, and now people will contact them to try to kind of influence them or to attack them. And some people have experienced that, and I think they proposed to, hey, we want to shield voting. And a lot of people here, 26 votes, well, a lot, they are for that. And let's just quickly click into this and see who this is. And like, I wish I would be more up to date, and I actually voted no here. I wish I'll be more in the game right now to actually tell you, okay, hey, these guys are all, they all have received 500,000 VP. But you can look at the numbers here on the right side, right? 500,000 VP, 500, 500, 500, 500, 500, 500. So all of the, and so these guys said it's an invalid question. So probably they have a reason, and I'm curious what it is. But some of the guys definitely said yes. And that's for a reason, because they will benefit from this, right? They can actually, they have received delegated voting power. And now if they vote on something, yes or no, nobody will know that they voted. And I said to myself, no, man, that's not a good idea. I mean, I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think that is a good idea, because if you're voting with your own voting power, with your own 12,000 VP, let's say, and you're voting on something where everyone, all your friends are voting yes, and you don't like it, and you vote no, and now people get in there and they see that you voted no, you're having a problem there. So you may not actually vote, just not to offend the rest of the community. I mean, it's an extreme situation, and some people don't care. They stand up for what they think. But some people, they don't want to go against the mainstream opinion, and I understand this. And there it's fair to shield their votes. But if someone has received delegated votes, and if I delegated the votes, I want to see how you're using my delegated votes, right? I don't have to go and like message you. I want to see it. And I don't want it to be hidden. And this will also introduce kind of various manipulation worries, right? Because suddenly you can take a lot of voting power, delegate it to someone, and that someone will vote, and we will never know what they voted. So this whole pre-proposal to me seems like a no, and a lot of people are voting yes. Because I think people also don't think very far, and also the people who would benefit from this privacy have all the voting power now. which is funny as well. These guys probably need to be excluded from this vote because it directly benefits them, and now they're going to be voting on what's benefiting them. I mean, you know, you're probably used to that from real life. Anyways, guys, I hope this was an interesting kind of reintroduction into the DAO ecosystem in Decentraland. I've learned a lot here during the recording of this video. Some of the things I've prepared, some of the things I've just discovered. Hopefully this was useful. Tune in more often. Subscribe to the channel if you are curious about the metaverse and Decentraland and all of that stuff. I'm trying to stay on top of the developments right now. And all right, guys, see you in the next one. Bye-bye.